Test, test, test.
Test, test, test. Speaking of testes, Kendrick, as a sperm expert, would you be able to weigh in on this movie? Do sperms talk to each other? What is the plural for sperms? And would sperm sound like their dad if they could talk?
To answer one of those questions, I think sperms with an S is the plural of sperm also with an S. So that's about the length of my sperm expertise.
I see.
I was curious as to the percentage efficacy of a diaphragm, since we see the one sperm make it around that diaphragm. It's 92 to 96% effective at preventing pregnancy.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's about time I hang up my sperm doctor hat and maybe go to a real school.
Well, that sounds good to me.
Hit it, boys!
Get together, have a few laughs.
Uh-oh! Shit, lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Lady, put the freaking gun down on the ground right now. Take your son across the freaking street and say until we come and get you.
Hello, and welcome to Where There's a Willis, There's a Way, a film podcast about the multitude of works by Bruce Willis. My name is Kendrick Martin, and with me as always,
Josh Carter.
So, if you're here listening for the first time, we're going to talk about a Bruce Willis movie, and then we're going to dive into the plot details and then Bruce Willis specifically, and then finish it off with the Wheel of Willis. Today we're going to be talking about the movie Look Who's Talking 2. Look Who's Talking 2. Look Who's Talking 2? I feel like if you were this must have led to one of those, who's on first conversations, when you go up to the ticket counter and you guys say like, "Hey, look who's talking to. I want 2 tickets to, please."
2 tickets to Look Who's Talking To.
Yeah, and then he goes, "Are you talking to me?" And he's like, No, look who's talking to.
Are you look who's talking to me? Oh, man.
If you want to get a hold of us and tell us what you think you would have done had you been a moviegoer back in the 90s, you can email us, williswaypod@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter at williswaypod.
Round, round, get around.
Look who's back.
What's up, my man?
Look who's expecting.
All right, lay one on me.
That's your baby sister Julie in there. She's kicking.
Now, wait a minute, let me get this straight. My little sister is in my juice cup?
TriStar Pictures presents
Mikey, this is your sister, Julie. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the outside. I'm going to be in charge of your life for the next 2 or 3 years, smacking you around, getting you in shape. Anything you need, don't be afraid to ask.
Who is this slime ball?
Look Who's Talking 2. Starring John Travolta,
Where's your nose?
Just don't pressure me.
Oh, man, this is kid.
Kirstie Alley,
Goodbye, mommy, little honey bunny. Yeah, whatever.
and the voices of Bruce Willis,
I got the time if you got the diapers.
Roseanne Barr,
What are you looking at?
and Damon Wayans.
Talk about attitude. Come on, let's take it to the zoo and leave it there. Good idea.
Of course, he would have a friend.
That audio was from the trailer of Look Who's Talking 2. I'm going to read the description from IMDb. This time, a new baby is on the way, and it's a girl. Wrapped together with the standard conflict between mother and father, Mikey engages in a bit of sibling rivalry with his new sister. This movie is written and directed by Amy Heckerling and stars the original cast members John Travolta, Kirstie Alley as James and Molly Ubraccio? I don't think we ever heard their last name pronounced.
I do not
parents
believe
of
so.
Yeah, the parents of Mikey, voiced by Bruce Willis, a toddler coping with the newest addition of the family, baby Julie, voiced by Roseanne Barr. This movie is currently available for rent on VOD, and as always, we will be spoiling the whole plot of this movie. So for some reason, you're really dying to follow along, pause now, go watch this movie, and come back.
However, if you're still here and you're on the fence, I don't necessarily think that you should throw your money at this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think our discussion will be better than Look Who's Talking To.
I almost guarantee it.
So Josh,
Yeah.
So Josh, with all that lead up we've had, what did you think of this movie? How did you think it compared to the first one?
You know, I actually went into this movie expecting it to be pretty much the same as the first one. It was the same writer, director, and same cast and everything. So I was expecting it to be about on par. And I was actually surprised that the quality diverged so much from the first one. I was really expecting amazing things based on the first one. And I feel like this movie, just blew my expectations out of the water by being one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life.
Quick aside, blowing something out of the water is usually a good thing. So I guess it would be it sank.
In this case, it was like a submarine, and a bunch of people lost their lives. Like, that's what got blown out of the water.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I am right there with you. I thought this took a hard dive from the first in quality, and I was really surprised. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice is it came out roughly 12 months after the first one. So I think that slapdash thrown together aspect, it was really visible.
Yeah.
There were very few saving graces, one of which I thought was the length. I think it came in right at 80 minutes.
Yeah, no kidding. It somehow felt so short and so long at the same time. Like, there's a quote unquote story running through this movie, and whenever it focuses on stuff like that, you're just kind of going like, all right, how is this movie so short? Like, how are they gonna expound upon all the stuff that needs to be expounded upon, and then like have jokes in there like the first one did? And then the joke's on you. They do not expound upon anything that they should. And you are treated to like a series of vignettes that are loosely connected. It doesn't even feel like this thing has a story that was more than somebody just being like, we should have like another fight scene. Yeah, okay. And then how about another dream sequence? Yeah, okay. How about another sequence at a children's gym? Is it baby gym? What the heck was that thing called again?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
well,
fucking
with
kid
Gilmore
gym.
Gottfried.
Yeah.
Oh, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah.
You're right. You do make a good point about it feeling like a series of vignettes. I don't think any. I'm just at a loss. When I read that IMDb description a little bit ago, it said wrapped together with a standard conflict between mother and father. What kind of standard conflict? What is there just off the shelf Dr. Spock standard conflict? Volume 2.
As we study in the field of psychology, a standard conflict between a mother and father is as follows. like, there's nothing like that. So I don't know.
I could not understand where that line came from.
Yeah.
So this movie introduces Kirstie Alley's character Molly, her brother.
Yeah.
And he's kind of described as a equal in the sense of being like a great accountant, but also seems to be unemployed.
Yeah.
And kind of just a traveling accountant. His story was all very strange. I read this in a review somewhere, and I could not find what review I read it in, but it was described as him going around as doing like Robert De Niro impressions, and I couldn't. There was one scene where I thought it was Robert De Niro who came in, and I'm just like, what happened?
You see, for me, with him, like, waving his gun around and everything like that, I just kept getting immense, like, Quentin Tarantino vibes, like, in, like, most of his movies. I feel like he'll play, like, somebody who's just absolutely batshit, and that is totally how that character felt.
One of the things they mentioned, they kind of compared him to Travis Bickle, I believe, which is a reference to the Robert De Niro movie Taxi Driver, which I just watched actually a week ago, or I probably would have totally missed that line because it went by so fast. But Taxi Driver, very different movie. Travis Bickle, not a desirable character to emulate in any sense of the word. So that was a very strange kind of plug at his, I suppose, Robert De Niro lookalikeness. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What did you think of the toilet? And I thought it was one of the most redeeming things because it took it into the, like, out of the snooze fest into the what the fuck level.
Let's just say, like, I'm so glad that I didn't decide to just try drugs when watching this movie, because I think that scene would have, like, sent me over the edge.
Oh my goodness.
I was watching this with my wife and one of our roommates, and when that scene came on, all of us were just in absolute shock, like, people's faces in their hands, just like, what? I cannot even watch. This is so insane. So,
first of all, the kid walks into the bathroom and looks at the toilet, and it's got the classic 90s bright blue cloth covers and all that disgusting stuff that was gross even then and is even grosser to think about now.
Yep.
And you're like, well, okay, this is weird. And then the kid cuts back, and it is a monster, a hell beast.
Voiced by Mel Brooks.
Yeah, voiced by Mel Brooks, of all things. And I don't even know. I couldn't tell. It just says, like, a couple of words.
Oh, man, it was insane. And it doesn't even come back.
No.
Like, it just happens once, and then you're just going, oh, okay. All right. Like, that one sequence could have been, like, a whole story arc featuring this Mr. Toilet character, and instead you're just treated a one sequence with that character. And then on the other hand, like, Gilbert Gottfried, who's in it for like 2 scenes, plays the same character in both scenes and really doesn't need to be in it more than just a one moment. Oh, it's Gilbert Gottfried. So the scripting department from the last movie compared to this movie is so horrendously bad. Like, let's go back to that fight that the couple has. So let's break it on down real quick. At first, John Travolta is frustrated that Molly's parents are thinking that he's not going to amount to anything because he's just a pilot and then he's not doing his taxes right and whatever. And so he's like, hey, I need you to kind of, like, leave me the fuck alone. And that's, like, his whole thing. And then what is, like, her thing back? Because I think she has, like, a thing back before they get to the brother, right?
So her thing is she worries all the time.
Uh-huh.
And the movie kind of played this. John Travolta doesn't really know what he's doing and needs to step it up. And she worries all the time, but knows what he should do. And then they both kind of realize... But she also overlooks, like, her brother's foibles and lets him wave a gun around. And then,
so, like, the stuff before the brother, not super memorable, but the stuff with the brother, like, as soon as he gets into the picture, I am totally with John Travolta on his whole argument of being like, yeah, your brother seems kind of nuts. I really don't want him around Mikey all that much. And whatever the girl's name is. I don't remember what the kid's name is.
Julie,
yeah. He's like, I don't want them around Mikey and Julie. And I am totally with him on that. There is no reason for, like, gun-waving accountant brother to be to be watching over Mikey.
What?
And it's not even
What
like
on
the
earth?
movie tries to subvert that and have everything go well at the end of the movie. So I do not get what they're even trying to do. Like, how, if you're going to write like a good fight sequence, you want to make it to where you can see the character perspective in both characters, and then you also want not only that, but you want some validity to both of their arguments. And really, other than the way that John Travolta acts towards her, I am not with Kirstie Alley much at all during that whole sequence, which is like most of the movie.
And we're not seeing reasons to empathize with her worrying at all up until the very end, where she goes, "Oh my gosh, it's pouring rain," and then turns out she's able to waltz through the airport, get on an airplane, and then they're like, oh, "Okay, I guess the weather is bad."
Yeah, but like, even if she hadn't gotten on that plane, they still would have grounded his flight, so it wouldn't have mattered anyways.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, it would have made a difference if like he decides to leave the flight and he's like, "I'm not risking my life for some paycheck or whatever," and then like you get some nice, "Oh, okay, he made the right choice," but you're just like, "Oh, there was no choice to be made anyways, because he just wasn't going to fly no matter what." So it just doesn't make any sense from a writing perspective. It really feels like this is first draft or like early second draft writing, and there is so much that could have been made better throughout this whole thing. So once again, when I'm like comparing it to the first movie, it's just, I'm left scratching my head like, how did they approve all of this, and what did they think that was going to happen with all of these scenes? Did they think it was going to be a good movie? Were they just making it to make it? Like, it's horrendous.
I agree.
Not to say that all of this movie was bad, though, because there was like one or two sequences I liked. Mostly just one. And that was the scene where they do like the Elvis all shook up scene in the like kids gym or whatever that John Travolta does.
I know Gilbert Gottfried got a Razzie for this movie, but I thought his performance was humorous enough and really made me start to think this was probably more of a kids movie than the first one.
Yeah, I could see that. But like, also, once again, when you're thinking about like the 4-quadrant movie or whatever, is this really a movie that's going to, even if it might interest kids, it has like quite a bit of language in it and stuff.
And it's going to give them nightmares with that freaking toilet.
Yeah. Well, and there's like a nightmare sequence at the beginning that's also quite scary when he's like looking up at the dolls.
Oh, yeah. And there's the scene where he tears the penguin apart.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many like crazy little sequences in this movie that are fairly scary. And
it's the opposite of a 4-quadrant movie.
Yeah, it's a no-quadrant movie. It does kind of have like a vague springtime for Hitler feeling, like they're trying to write it off or something. I don't know. It's bad. Yeah. It's so bad.
Yep.
I'm not a woman, full disclosure, but the friend character of Molly, Kirstie Alley's character, just falls in love with this brother guy, and that is immediately after she gets a gun pulled on her. And I know of no women that would prefer to meet their future boyfriend or whatever via somebody pulling a gun on them. So that was bonkers.
You're referring to the character of Rana, played by Twink Kaplan, I believe.
Yeah, actually, I think her name was pronounced Rona because it was like kept giving me like Corona flashbacks.
Oh, Corona. You're talking about the beer, right? There's no other type of Corona.
Yeah, that's it.
The sun's Corona, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing where, for as short as this movie is, what a little bit of fleshing out of some of this stuff would have gone a long ways. There's like a throwaway line about her going on a lot of dates with people, and then she enjoys them all enough, but then she like flash forwards to picturing them as parents and nopes out.
Yeah. Which is, I think, a reference to the first one.
Yeah, right. Because Kirstie Alley does the same thing. We're not ever seeing her look at her life with Kirstie Alley's brother and be like, wow, he's going to be a great dad.
Yeah. But I don't even know why they would introduce these two characters. Or maybe Rona's from the first movie. I don't even remember. But I don't get why you'd give attention.
She is, yeah.
Oh, she is? Okay. I don't get why you'd give attention to these two characters and then not give them enough attention to make them compelling or interesting in any shape or form. Because, like, the movie's 80 minutes. It's got a little bit of time if it wanted to bump it up to 90 minutes and give, like, a minute of exposition throughout this movie. And then, like, a minute of us seeing good sequences with these characters. Maybe spice up the dialogue a little bit here and there. And then, like, bam, you're at 85 minutes. That's still a pretty short movie. And I care a lot more about it. It's so much of this movie I was really trying to care, and I just could not at all.
So thinking about this movie and compared to the first one, what worked so well for the first one was these. It felt like the comedy was hitting full force all the time, and
or at least
the
most
mix
of the time.
Right, but there was like all these elements of comedy that were working so well because Kirstie Alley and John Travolta were sparring, and you had Bruce Willis's one-liners were there to just always add like a jab, and then he, as a baby, was getting into antics, creating some physical comedy. And in this movie, the sequel, there's a little bit of kid plotline with Mikey learning to use the bathroom to pee in the toilet, which, as we've already discussed, that toilet scene, this plotline just goes nowhere. And then Julie is learning to walk, I think, and
which I didn't even get was a thing until like she actually walked.
Yeah. I want to save the discussion on Roseanne's voiceover until we talk about Bruce, because I feel like we can compare them.
Yeah.
But again, that the through line of Julie learning to walk and Mikey learning to piss in a toilet without getting eaten by the monsters, very little care. The parents didn't even notice.
Yeah.
Little comedy.
Yep. Yeah, all of the joy that felt like was in the first movie is just totally gone. It's all like cynicism, because most of it you're having the two leads fight throughout the movie. The good underlying story that was there, or the competent underlying story that was there in the first one, is just not at all in this one. So you're just the entire time begging for any reason to care, and you are not given any throughout this entire movie. Something else that I wanted to talk about was, like, it's a very loose theory, but I've got kind of a theory that this movie and these movies, like, Look Who's Talking and Look Who's Talking 2, and the Die Hard films have a concept of, like, bureaucracy and kind of white collar is fine for those people, but the real heroes are the blue collar people. And I wonder if that's going to be a theme throughout a lot of the movies that Bruce Willis is in, because that's kind of something that I got from the whole sequences whenever we saw John Travolta's character, because he's not necessarily winning Molly over with like how good he is at numbers, but his dancing and his humor and his down to earthness is what wins her over. And so also with like John Travolta, I feel like you're kind of rooting for him throughout this movie, and with like the conversation with Molly's parents, you're pitting kind of blue collar, like, I just don't get why the government doesn't just tell me how much money I owe them, versus like the white collar, like, well, you see the tax deductions for these office chairs and blah, blah, blah. Like, you have that whole dynamic going on. So did that come across to you when you were watching the movie? Did you feel kind of a pro blue collar message, or am I just imagining this and then reading it onto the movie afterwards?
I didn't pick up the blue collar versus white collar dynamic, but I did think that it makes a point of kind of, it seemed like John Travolta's character was more in the spontaneous, let's go out and party vibe, and Kirstie Alley was the let's stay at home and read W-2s on a Saturday night. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I noticed it falling into place. It is an interesting discussion. I know we discussed a lot talking about Die Hard around its seemingly hatred for bureaucracy in general.
Yeah,
I didn't get as much animosity towards bureaucracy here, but I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and it's a working theory. We'll see how that plays out with other stuff. Maybe it'll be something that'll fade away, but my guess is that more than not, we'll end up coming back to something like that. Another little fun thing, the subtitles are all sorts of messed up for this movie. If you listen to the other Look Who's Talking podcast, we talked about how the subtitles, and we watched that one on Hulu, I watched this one on Amazon, so it's all over the place. But the subtitles are like weirdly shortened, and sentences are not their full versions. They're just kind of the Cliff Notes versions of lines. And in this movie, they don't have that problem necessarily. I wasn't 100% paying attention to it, but it didn't seem like they had that problem. The thing that it does have is there are two characters that are siblings, Molly and Stuart. And Molly is sometimes spelled Molly, and then other times is spelled Mollie. And then the brother Stuart is sometimes spelled Stuart, and then other times is spelled Stewart. So I don't know why this is happening. Canonically in the movie, I think that they show Molly's name at one point, and it's Mollie, but I don't know about the brother at all, and I just cannot imagine why they didn't at least at some point just look through this and go, all right, did we spell the name the same across everything? I do not understand it at all. It's bonkers to me.
That is really wild. Yeah, I just double checked. According to IMDb, it's Mollie for Molly. So
yeah, what does it say for Stuart?
It says Stuart.
Interesting. Yeah, I do not know why that happened. That did not make any sense to me.
Yeah, it feels like they're just hand typing credits.
Yep. Maybe that's what happened.
Or it's just like voice to speech, voice to text.
Yeah. Very strange.
All right, before we jump into Bruce Willis specifically, we're going to talk about our trivia topics. The biggest one, the most important one, really the reason this podcast exists, is to talk about the Star Trek connection.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think we each brought one this time. I wanted to mention Rick Avery, who plays the burglar at the end of the movie, who breaks in and causes Stuart to chase him, starting a fire, and that whole fiasco. Mm-hmm. Rick Avery is a common stunt performer in Hollywood, and he was the stunt coordinator on Star Trek Insurrection.
Nice. Yeah, and for those of you that haven't watched it, at the end of this movie, the brother that John Travolta doesn't trust leaves the house to go chase after a robber that broke in at 7 p.m. when people are still in the house, and then he leaves stuff on the stove and it burns, and it almost burns the apartment down with kids inside of it.
It was like a Die Hard-esque robbery where he had a diamond cutter, just pop open a window on a third story apartment building, all to steal what presumably was some stuff in a drawer.
Yeah, it made no sense. It made absolutely no sense.
Very shoved in there.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the Star Trek connections. The other Star Trek connection is in the sound department, but it's not Tom Boyd, our favorite oboe player. It's not him. So, you know how the new Star Trek films have a pretty consistent throwback to the Beastie Boys? They have Sabotage in both Star Trek 09 and Star Trek Beyond. And in this movie, the Beastie Boys are also credited because during the potty training sequence at the very beginning, John Travolta says, "You gotta fight for your right to party." So the Beastie Boys got credit, so they're the other Star Trek connection between the two movies.
Well, I think those are some pretty strong connections.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't want to use Kirstie Alley again, so we brought out these two.
No, we did not. I was actually kind of expecting maybe Gilbert Gottfried to have performed at some Star Trek connected thing, but I don't think so.
Oh, man, that would be great if he was like a Ferengi or something.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, he has to have played some interesting alien or voice of computer or something.
Yeah.
But nope.
That would have been great. So, Gilbert Gottfried, if you ever listen to this, or anybody that knows Gilbert Gottfried, you should tell him to do something for Star Trek Discovery or whatever the other one is, like Strange New Worlds, just so that we can go back and re-record this whole episode just for this one moment.
I will. There are a few things that would cause me to re-record an episode: Sesame Street sponsoring us, and Gilbert Gottfried changing anything on account of us. So the list is not long, but it does exist.
It does. Yeah.
So, Josh, we talked about in the last Look Who's Talking movie, Look Who's Talking the first, about how much money it made, and in comparison to a lot of Bruce Willis's other works, it was a smash success.
Yep.
And I think for good reason. I think it was very funny and enjoyable. This movie, on the other hand, came out much faster and obviously had a much smaller feel. And I don't think it... I don't think there's any way that it could have made as much money just because it was an 80-minute movie. But I could not find... The Wikipedia page did not show its budget. Did you know the budget for how much this movie was?
Yeah, I did find the budget for this movie. So this movie, just for comparison, the first movie was filmed on $7.5 million, which is the smallest of all of the films that we've covered by far. And this movie was filmed on a $22 million budget, so quite a bit larger than the first one. And did you see how much this movie made, Kendrick?
I did. So, like we said, the first one had a budget of $7.5 million, had a box office pull of $297 million.
Yep.
So that, I'm not a mathematician, but I feel like that is a many X return.
39.6 actually.
Well, see, you are the mathematician. How much did you say Look Who's Talking 2 had a budget of?
$22 million.
And it had a box office of 47.8. So let me do the math. That's a lot less.
2.173.
A lot less.
It is a lot less. That math is correct.
Still profitable somehow.
Doing better than my AMC stocks, but not by much.
Oof. Ooh, deep cut.
Yeah.
Maybe by the time this episode's released, AMC will have rallied.
Oh my god, that'd be the best. I would. Me and my 3 shares going to the moon. Yeah. Another notable thing about this movie is it is rated PG-13, and there are 2 uses of the word fuck in this movie. which is pretty impressive because nowadays you can only get away with one fuck in a PG-13 movie. It's kind of a famous rule, unless you are using the word fuck in song, in which case you can use it, I think, up to 3 times. It's 2 or 3 times. And yeah, so it's insane that it even does that. Oh, and the other thing is that I think if you're going to use fuck, you can't use it in a sexually derogative way. Otherwise, it makes the movie R. There's a lot of rules around the usage of fuck. I don't get why they think that only hearing it once in a PG-13 movie will make it so much better, as if like kids will only have a tolerance of one fuck, and then once they hear it twice, then they turn evil or something. So I don't get it, but there are multiple fucks in this movie.
I'm interested if you have sources for these comments, because I used to believe that those statements, that the MPAA had rules around the number of times you could say fuck in a movie and get a PG-13 rating. But when Hamilton was released last year in 2020, I remember Lin-Manuel Miranda saying somewhere publicly, those rules aren't really rules. Those are just kind of what the populace believes, and it's actually not that way. And that's why Hamilton was able to get a PG-13 rating.
Well, Hamilton also blanked out 2 of the fuck words. They only have fuck in it once in the...
Yeah, but I think that was a Disney thing. That was not a ratings thing.
Ah, that could be. That could entirely well be. The whole like rating system is super, super wonk. But I did look into it. They are general guidelines, but typically if a movie has multiple uses of the word fuck, they won't give it a PG-13 rating. It's just like they're following like a 25-year-long precedent. And obviously they listen and work with big studios like Marvel works to make sure that all of their movies are not rated R, at least at the time of recording of this podcast. So they'll send in the movie and then they'll be like, there's like a little bit too much gore and stuff like that. So then they'll actually like tone down the gore. That's been the types of things that have happened before. So you see some movies that'll push boundaries of like PG-13, and then other studios will like say, you know, this movie is pretty gory. It should probably be rated R, so we get that R rating. And then they're like, I don't really see it rated R. And then they're going, it's rated R. And then it does end up getting rated R. So, I mean, they don't have many hard and fast rules about what they actually have to do, but there are some pretty general rules.
General guidelines has to submit to whatever Admiral Rules tells him to do.
But General and Admiral are like both essentially the same rank in 2 different branches, right?
I don't know. not in
Kendrick
Hollywood.
land.
They're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to go to Kendrick's stand one time, just once.
Just once.
Yeah.
Just once.
Yeah, one other thing that I wanted to say about this movie is Amy Heckerling, the director of the first movie, was pulled into this movie, and she said in 2016 that she was basically forced to make this movie by the studio, and she had considered the story to be over prior to this movie. So... Well, she had said no back in 1990, but good on you for coming to your senses now.
I read the plot summary for Look Who's Talking the Third, or whatever that next one is called. Look Who's Talking Again. And the voices are, because Bruce Willis isn't in it, we're not going to watch it. But Christy Alley and John Travolta are in it. And the voices are dogs. They get 2 dogs.
Oh, yeah.
But the plot seems very similar. Yeah. Christy Alley worries about John Travolta's character cheating on her. John Travolta's worried about not making enough money and decides to fly more piloty planes. Like, that's the plot of the movie. But with dogs.
And you know that, like, every single writer gets paid more per movie than I get paid in a year. It's disgusting. That's what that is. Cool.
Maybe your AMC stock will make it all worth it, Josh.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Finally, I'll hold on to that.
Let's talk briefly about Bruce Willis's performance in this movie. Again, his role was fairly minimal. Mm-hmm. I actually think if you just take the Bruce Willis bits, I enjoyed his performance in this one more than the last one. I feel like his jokes are let to go on a little bit longer. He doesn't rely solely on kind of one-liner throwaway jokes, but has a little bit of building up a bit and acting more. How did you think it compared?
Yeah, I guess the rest of the movie was so disappointing that it was hard to really focus on him. But I do agree with what you're saying. Like, I didn't think that he did any worse than the first movie, for sure. I'd probably say that it's about on par if I had to say. Maybe a little bit better. I see what you're saying, though, because Mikey, since he's growing up a little bit, he's having to make, like choices that a character would make and justifications that a character would say. So Bruce Willis is having to chomp a little bit more.
Still extremely weird that we hear the kid's voice sometimes and we see his mouth move all the time. Oh
my God, yeah.
But we're just dealing with Bruce Willis's voiceover. Yeah. Very unsettling, and I feel like the jokes were not worth it.
I just want to go back over this movie and like just redub in what the kid looks like it's mouthing. Like it's just going like ba 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 ba. Like
oh, good.
Just how bonkers would this
you nailed
movie
it. Nailed it. Roseanne, on the other hand, I thought did terrible. Did not enjoy. I think it's Roseanne's shtick as a comedian to be very deadpan in her delivery. Mm-hmm. But when you're voicing a baby, which has a lot of emotional ups and downs, that deadpan delivery was kind of lost on me.
Yeah. Also, like when she was a fetus and had like the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck and was doing like the suicide things, I was like, oh my God, what am I listening to? It was nuts.
A lot of the writing around her one-liners were fairly similar to the Bruce Willis one-liners from before. Bruce Willis, as a fetus, talks about his third arm that he discovers. Roseanne talks about the second mouth she discovers. I was groaning.
Yeah.
The baby puppet, still extremely scary.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. It did give me like a pretty good comparison, though, to the first movie. Like, I don't feel like I'm saying, well, who knows how Roseanne Barr would have done with Bruce Willis's role, because she basically had Bruce Willis's role from the first movie.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh my God. We haven't even talked about the sperm sequence at the beginning. How did you feel like that compared to the first movie?
I think the first one, I was just in shock. I didn't know what to think, and I was just kind of like, what is happening? Yeah. And in this one, it was basically a redo, and you're like, okay, I know how this works. Yep, here we go. And then there's like, they have to work their way around the diaphragm, and we're just like watching it go on for a while.
Horrendous.
Yeah, very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange. The puppet of the baby Julie is still creepy as ever. I'm glad we skipped through the pregnancy pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I had completely forgotten about the whole umbilical cord bit and needing a C-section and all of that.
John Travolta fainting.
Oh, yeah, John Travolta fainting. And then he had a bandage on his head. Yeah. It was such a like SNL sketch-esque thing that just happened and then was forgotten about.
Once again, this movie is all non sequitur, so if you expect things to come back, lower your expectations. So, as far as movies go that have Bruce Willis in them that we've seen, I have, just to recap, Die Hard, In Country, Look Who's Talking, Die Hard 2, Sunset, Blind Date, and I'm going to put this movie down at the very bottom. Look Who's Talking 2 takes my number 7 out of 7 spot. What about you?
And to no one's surprise, it will also to be number 7 for me. So my order is Die Hard, In Country, Die Hard 2, Blind Date, Sunset, Look Who's Talking, and Look Who's Talking 2.
Oh, big surprise. Big surprise. I have very rarely seen a movie that is worse than this movie. If you've not seen Love on a Leash, I would recommend that. But yeah, it's good times.
You recommended me not seeing that?
No,
Is that what you
I would
said?
recommend you see Love on a Leash if you haven't seen it yet. It should be available for free
Just so that
on
I can
YouTube.
Not like it?
Oh yeah. I'm not kidding when I say that it is probably the most horrendous thing that's been called a film. A full feature-length film to have been released that I've seen. There may be worse out there, but it is so horrendous. There's a dog that's like kind of like a Look Who's Talking dog, actually, where the dog has like this voice behind him, and he like at one point stops a character from getting raped, and it is nuts. It is nuts.
Wow, you're really selling me on it.
It's got a magical pond. I don't know what else to tell you to make you want to watch this movie.
Oh my goodness.
It's so bad. Whew.
I think that's the best segue into the Wheel of Willis.
The Wheel of Willis.
Wheel of Willis.
And what do we say every time we gotta
Whisk that wheel.
Yeah, that's right. So it's spinning. Is Willis's performance closer to overboard or underplayed?
I think underplayed. I think underplayed because you could have really gone to 11 with being a baby.
Yeah.
Literally. And
no kidding. That would have been horrible.
while like I said, I think he seemed to care a little bit more this time. Mm-hmm. He's just given so little that it's hard to not just seem very understated. What was the opposite of overboard? Underboard? Inboard?
Underplayed.
Underplayed.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think that likewise he probably could have made this performance super, super hammy and it would have been the worse for it. So I'm glad that he did not.
I feel like there's an interesting multiverse theory of Bruce Willis and Nicolas Cage both exploding with a long history of movies. Some are great, some are not great. But now in the year of our Lord 2021, both of them, Bruce Willis and Nicolas Cage, you know what to expect when you go to see their movies, like a new release. And I feel like they could have easily reversed spots, and we could have had Bruce Willis out there doing Nicolas Cage-esque movies nowadays.
Man, the bees, not the bees. Oh man, I'm just trying to imagine Bruce Willis doing like the filing scene that Nicolas Cage has, where he's like A B C D E F G. Do you know that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so glad that the universe that we live in is this universe, and not that, and not the weird Nicolas Cage upside down universe.
Yeah.
Somewhere though, there's like some other people being like trying to struggle to figure out some sort of pun related to Nicolas Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cage Uncaged or something.
Yeah. Cool. Well, as always, we're going to go ahead and plug our stuff. If you guys like our podcast, love for you to rate us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere where you listen to podcasts. We always appreciate that. If you leave us a review, we will probably read those out loud. We like reading stuff that people write about us or write to us. And if you want to send us an email, you can always send us an email at williswaypod@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at williswaypod. You can find me. Oh, what? Go ahead.
Nope.
You can find me, Josh, on Twitter at joshingcarter.
And you can find me, Kendrick, on Twitter at kmartinix, KMARTINIX. Next time, we will be covering Bonfire of the Vanities. Josh, before we sign off, it just now occurred to me, I know nothing about Bonfire of the Vanities. Do you think it's about people taking a bunch of bathroom vanities and starting a bonfire?
I unfortunately know a little bit more about that, but I will not comment on the matter. We'll see how right you are next week.
Joke's on me. We'll find out.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Goodbye. I think that was adequately stupid.